I was like, well, it's my pleasure to introduce one of our alum. That's the way to start. And Jeri Culp was Director of Data Science and Edge Solutions at HPE. And she leads the Data Sciences and AI business in the Advanced Compute and Solutions Group at HPE Inc. And she's responsible for end-to-end leadership. And this, if I read this, I will be eating into her speaking time. And
I was getting instructions.
come on down.
Thank you. It's always a cable issue. All right. All good. All right, well, thanks for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. This might be a little bit different because I come from industry. I work at HP, been there since I graduated from CSU, which was quite a while ago. I won't date myself by telling you what graduating class I am. But I've had many different jobs. I was a computer science major. Here, we didn't have an AI discipline at that time. There were some classes, but the world has changed a lot. And so as my job at HP, what I focus on is how do I help the folks you're hearing today do data science and AI work, right? So we have a lot of compute, we have software, we have services, but what are the problems that I can help solve in the industry for people, whether it's in the research or the public, private sector, everywhere type of thing. So what I thought I would do today was kind of talk you through what are the trends that we are seeing happening in the space that is driving AI and data science work. And then, what are the big problems to solve that we see? And then what's HP doing about it? So let's get started. So one of the things that I hear a lot from people is we are bombarded all of the time with all of these different AI, data science, data, inferencing, you name it, right? It's coming at us so fast. The question is, how do you figure out what to pay attention to? It can be really hard and where to move to versus where to maybe lag and wait for things to mature a little bit more. So let me take you through the trends that we are watching that are really dictating, in some cases, the way AI is going and some of the technologies that are being developed. So the first one is the data explosion. And so as you can see, the big bars is the data that's being generated and the rapid pace at which it's generated. And so if you look at it, these are measured in zettabytes. That's huge, right? It's even hard to comprehend what a zettabyte is, right? And so there's a little cheat sheet down in the right corner about what fits into a zettabyte, right? It could be 30 billion 4K movies. It can be 7.5 trillion MP3 songs, right? It's a massive amount of data. And the very interesting part that we're really watching is, if you notice, there's a little bar that's beside each of the big bars. That's the physical pipe that can transport things to the cloud. So we do not have the ability, we lost the ability quite a while ago to be able to transport all the data that's generated to the cloud if that's where we're going to act upon it. So a lot of data is getting trapped at the edge where it's created. Now keep in mind though, not all data is good data. I mean, if I look at my kids' phones, there's a lot of pictures they're taking that just aren't worth keeping, right? So there's a need to be able to go through this data and pick out the good data. Now the next trend around data is the type of data it is, and this has a pro and a con to it, right? So it used to be that all of our data was tabular, right? It's columns, it's rows, it's very neat and tidy. I mean, it might be missing, you might have to clean it up a lot, but it was easy to deal with. But then we started getting images, videos, MP3s, audio, PDFs, tweets. You have all of this data, which has to be stored differently, has to be acted upon differently. So now you need different methods to be able to use it and to be able to pull it in. So that's the complexity of it. Now the richness of it is, if you think about it, and where we're seeing a lot of companies want to go to, is if I can combine all of this data, the richness in which I own is amazing, right? I have call data, I have chat data, I have forecasting data. I have all of these different data types, but pulled together can make something extremely powerful for my company. And so, whereas the amount of data and the type of data is a bit of a complexity, it opens up doors for us to figure out what to do with it and new use cases that we can experience. The other one is the rate of disruption of technology. It's really amazing the adoption rate that we are seeing. When you look at what does it take to achieve 1 million users, right? When you look at Netflix, right, that was in the years. And then we have Facebook days, we get Spotify shorter days. You get all the way down to ChatGPT. It took only 5 days to get 1 million users on ChatGPT. So we're seeing this acceleration in technology adoption that is just phenomenal, which is causing everything to move faster. And that's part of the probably frustration everybody's feeling about what should I be using, what should I be doing, because it's moving so fast. ChatGPT, 3 came out, then there was 4, and now, you've got Google coming out, you got DeepSeek, you got all of these, what should I do? And so once again, it's great to see this technology evolution and adoption. At the same time, it makes it difficult to understand how to move to the next technology, and definitely heard that in the first talk about how do you balance that. The other shift, and this one has a couple of it behind it. So, speaking of ChatGPT, the very, very interesting thing ChatGPT did was it made everybody realize how you can use it. But it also made people realize that my data is my value, right? I might not have thought my call data, my forecasting data, my all kinds of data, right? I might not have thought that was interesting, but when you look at what you can do with it, with some of the generative AI and these large language models, all of a sudden we're seeing kind of a shift for people saying, okay, how can I take my data, which is now important to me, how do I use it in a very domain-specific way so that I can have it provide value to my business, right? And so what we're seeing is, one, people want to protect their data now. Now we're seeing a shift going from the cloud to a lot of the data being kept local because they want to keep it private because that's their domain knowledge. Well, to be able to do that, because you heard about the high compute needs for some of this analysis that people are doing, how do I now bring it local and be able to work on it local? And what does that do from a model perspective? So we're also seeing these models get smaller so that they can be more on-prem and people can use it with their domain knowledge. And the really interesting thing is when you use it for a specific purpose, then your performance actually goes up. Because a lot of the large language models, they're so broad that you get a level of performance out of it, but when you can train it to your data, you're basically biasing it to your data, then it performs much, much better. And so this is a shift that we're seeing within companies as well, that they want to be able to bring things more local, to be able to maintain that security on their data, and at the same time get the better performance that they need. Then the last trend that I wanted to talk a little bit about was how this is driving, AI is really driving things to the edge, right? It's about where the humans and the technology connect. And we're seeing that across every industry. There's certainly some more rapid movers, I would say. Retail has been one, where they've been trying to analyze at the edge and be able to do things in the moment. Autonomous cars, great example there as well. But you're seeing it in manufacturing, hospitals, agriculture, everywhere. right? So you're seeing a lot of value being driven there. And so whereas my team has really been looking at how do we help from a AI development perspective, what we're seeing now is this huge shift to everybody wants to be able to create that, but then put it at the edge. The use cases at the edge are just expanding immensely, and some of that is due to the technologies that are available to use. Generative AI has helped a lot, but at the same time, there's more than one tool in your toolbox. Not everything is generative AI, but it definitely has opened up doors when you look at, customer satisfaction, marketing content generation, and things like that. So it has been a big eye-opener for a lot of people, but it's we are seeing a big shift then how things are done at the edge versus just maybe in the cloud or on-prem in corporations. So then when I look at, some disruptors that are happening, I've talked about a few of these, and I won't go through all of them, but there's a significant amount of technology that's happening right now that is going to play out over the next 5 to 10 years that is really, really interesting to watch. I talked about the domain language models, right? I think we're going to see more and more vertical AI, so very much for a specific purpose, whether it's agriculture or something like that. So we're going to see a continued push on that. Synthetic data is a super interesting area to look at, where yes, there's a lot of data generated. No, not all of it's good, but not everybody has the data that they need in order to do the job, right? So being able to create synthetic data is a way of solving that, and you heard a little bit about that here. The other interesting thing about synthetic data is I can create customers, right? So I can create synthetic data that represents my customers that I can then look at how do I validate things through my AI model that is a customer. Or it could be, I don't have a customer service department, I'm a very small company. How can I create that with synthetic data so that I now I've created it from an AI digital workforce standpoint. So I think this is an area that we're going to see a lot of movement over the next 5 years in this synthetic data capability and how it's used. Agentic AI, it's probably the next horizon of what everybody's talking about. We were able to analyze things. Generative AI is giving us the ability to create things. But how do we get to the next step where there's the ability to take action? That's going to be a really key thing to get to, and as robotics come up, that ties in a lot with that. So I think the interesting thing on that one, and it gets into more of that trust capability, because AI struggles a bit to move beyond the speed of trust. Because a lot of people tell me, if it's 100% right, I believe it. If it's 99% right, I don't believe it. So I think from an academic standpoint, you understand 100% is really not achievable. So how do we provide trust as we get into these more agentic areas where we want things to take action? Ethics, big one, right? Whether it's bias, it's how we should be using AI. That's going to be a huge topic over the next X number of years, with how we put guardrails on how we use AI and how we govern it. I think we certainly see a lot coming out of Europe. They're usually a first mover where that's concerned, but that will continue to evolve as well. So these are just some of the areas that we are following to understand what are the things that our customers want to do, what are these new use cases that can happen that we would want to help support our customers with, and so how then would we kind of work these in, and what's the development we need to do to be able to do that. And so this is kind of how my team looks across this space and tries to follow all of these trends to be able to understand that. So then I look at it and say, okay, then if you look at the waves of AI, you know, what's happened and where do we see things going, right? We started out, you know, speech recognition, that type of stuff, you know, perceptive AI. Now we're really in the generative AI phase, I would say. And the interesting thing there is generative AI has a big splash. There's not a lot of ROI coming out of companies right now with generative AI. I think we're going to see a reset here, and it's going to be probably in the area we're going to see smaller models that are connected together to do this work versus these large models that do the generative AI. They're not going away, but I think from a purpose perspective, for companies to get ROI, they're going to have to take a little bit different tact, because we're going to see there's some great use cases. Like I said, digital marketing, content generation, the chat support, all that kind of stuff has really taken steps forward. But there's a lot of things that it can't do at this point. Agentic AI, we see some steps there, right? The coding assistants that are available today are great. Customer service, you know, patient care, those are the types of things here. But being able to really, for me to type in, I want to go to Miami on Friday, come back on Tuesday, I'd like to fly in the morning, just book me a ticket. That's probably not going to happen for a while, right? It's still going to give me choices, and then I'm going to say, yeah, book that one type of stuff. So there's a lot of work to be done in the agentic AI to really make progress so that we believe it and we trust it. And then the physical AI. These are the self-driving cars. These are the robotics, right? And, you know, there's a lot going on in the field of robotics. You know, obviously the manufacturing for cars has had a lot of robotics in it, but freestanding robotics is really taking huge strides forward. I don't know if you follow Jensen Huang and his GTC conference. He had a great keynote speech and talked a lot about this. You can definitely tell from his perspective on compute, he is putting his eyes on robotics and looking forward there. And he actually brought some robots out on stage that I've now actually seen in the Disney parks. So you're starting to see it more from that consumerism, but you know, at what point will we, you know, really have the Jetsons Rosie in our house helping us out do things? It's probably not as far off as we think. So what are the big problems to solve when you look at all of this information? When you look at the data, you look at it at the edge, you look at all of these problems, data movement is going to be one of the biggest problems we solve. That and, you know, tapped in with networking, right? So those are going to be very key areas that are going to take investment so that we can actually act on the data and do the things that we want to do. And so this is a big area that we're looking at. Probably, I don't think HP can solve it on our own. There's going to have to be partners here because this is a massive problem that is worldwide. The next one is AI sustainability. You know, when I showed the chart on the data growth, the one thing that I didn't talk about there is we actually don't have enough energy in the world to move all the data to the cloud. That just doesn't exist, right? So AI takes a lot of compute. It takes a lot of energy. I mean, Microsoft is trying to buy 3 Mile Island, right, so that they can get an energy source. So we have to figure out how do we make AI sustainable, because whereas we might be offsetting in some good ways, it can be offsetting in bad ways from an energy consumption standpoint. And that's especially concerning when you look at, you know, how do we make AI available to all? Because it can't just be the rich that can afford AI, which, based on some of these dynamics, is that way at the moment. And then the last area, and I think you heard about it a little bit this morning, is the trustworthiness, the transparency. It's how do we enable guardrails? How do we enable people to understand if I create this AI or if I use this AI, I can trust the answer. If you look at ChatGPT, I mean, it's pretty much trained on the internet of data, right? It has a lot of knowledge, and it speaks very, very confidently. So you don't always know when it tells you something that is not true. I mean, they're made to be dream machines. They make up the next thing, right? So that's their purpose. So being able to put some type of guardrails or to be able to give you the transparency of where the data came from, what the method was that was used to come up with the answer is going to be key for us moving forward so that people do have trust in what they're doing. But I think Air Canada, I think it was, had a chatbot that gave someone information which was inaccurate, and they purchased a ticket based on that, and then they sued Air Canada, right? So you're seeing companies very nervous about how can I trust what my technology is telling my customers, and am I at risk? So there's going to be a lot that has to go on there. Some of it will be regulatory that is defined for us. Some of it will be methods, right? How do we provide transparency or traceability in what I've got here and the answers I'm getting so that I know that what I'm doing and the information I'm giving is correct. So from an HP perspective, we really do believe that AI is changing the way we work, we play, we live, all of these things. It's affecting us in everything we do. I mean, my phone, my Gmail sorts for me, Netflix puts up what they think I'm going to like. All of these things are just affecting me all day long, right? So it's everywhere. And it's going to take compute to do that. And it's going to be different for every person, right? How we use AI, how we want to use AI is very, very different. And how my customers want to use AI is very, very different. So it's a very unique field. We also think it's going to be hybrid, right? So I know I talked about it at the edge, but you can't do, you have to cross-communicate at times, right? So you can't do everything just at the edge. You can do a lot. If you look at autonomous checkout, yes, I want to, in the immediacy of the moment, determine what you picked up so I can charge you. But then a lot of the data for the analytics will go to the cloud and it'll be mined later. So it's a very hybrid world in making these things work. And the local inferencing, you're seeing a lot getting faster, cheaper, safer locally because you're seeing a lot of innovation happening at the silicon level. So we're seeing huge, there was NVIDIA made a huge announcement at GTC about their ARM product that they're getting into. So you're seeing a lot of change that's happening around purpose-built for AI use, which I think is going to benefit, especially as we look at things at the edge. And we're seeing that use cases are becoming more tangible. I think, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when we would talk about, AI, data science, and people would say, yeah, I just don't quite get it. I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about a model, you're talking about like fraud detection, I don't get it kind of thing. But now you're starting to see very tangible things that even my sister, who's not technical at all, totally understands, right? She uses ChatGPT, she does these things, and she can see the benefit, right? Whether it's image and video creation. I even have some, I use Adobe Firefly where I will go out and make images to put in my presentations to help better represent what I'm looking for versus trying to get a stock image. And so you're seeing a lot of creativity happening there. Research, summarization, creating content, whether it's marketing, whether it's bids that we're sending out to customers, things like that. You're seeing the ability to do that. Document analysis, that's been around for a while, but it's becoming way more efficient with AI. And then just everyday PC use, right? Most PCs are now putting NPUs in them, shipping with Copilot and things like that so that they can put AI in the hands of just the everyday workers. Right? And so you're seeing across the board that there's a lot of use cases that are coming up that are touching our everyday lives. So what's HP's approach to all of this, right? So we really have 3 areas we're focused on. One is high performance compute. The group I work for is in the highest compute area of HP, so we do workstations. So they can be personal devices, they can be racked, and all, but they're high performance in relation to, they can hold up to like 4 GPUs and things like that. So how do we help and focus on getting high compute to help with solving these problems? The next one is the workflow optimization. How can we help our customers either build the workflows or being able to do the work they need to do especially as we're seeing less and less subject matter experts coming in. They're not necessarily trained in the way to make a chatbot, but they maybe have the domain knowledge of the sales data. So how can we help them achieve their goals and get their workflows done? And then just looking at new and innovative ways to solve problems. Some of it is around being able to enable GPUs for people. So these are really the focus areas from an HP standpoint of how we're trying to enable AI in the industry. So me personally, what do I do? So we have workstations, right? We have high compute workstations, whether they're mobile, all the way up to these desktops that can do 4 really big, beefy GPUs. We also have software. I create software with my team to help people be able to do their development, so they can turn on their workstation and have a curated stack of tools that they know they don't have to then have to worry about all the versioning. And then we have a platform that enables people to do their development within Jupyter Lab and pretty soon VS Code. So we're trying to enable things locally because locally it's pretty much the wild, wild west. There's a lot of open source tools, but not necessarily easy ways to pull it together. And then the last area, which is where probably a lot of the innovation is coming out of, is GPU access. Not everybody has the access to the GPUs that they need, and therefore they're limited in what they can do. And so what we've been working on is how, like this right here doesn't have, the computer I have today, because I travel with it, doesn't have a GPU in it, right? So I can do very, very little on it. But I do have software that lets me go back to the pool of GPUs at work, so I can do AI work, and whether it's AI modeling or inferencing, and I can take advantage of other GPUs somewhere else. And so that's really helping a lot of our customers be able to kind of right-size their workforce in the sense of what equipment they have, and really help democratize a little bit the ability to get to the compute that they need. And so these are the areas that HP is really focused on from an industry perspective, based on all the trends that I was telling you about, in trying to help our customers solve our problems. The other thing I would talk about is, and this one's near and dear to my heart, is, data science and AI is a community. We have been engaged with the community and working directly with a lot of data scientists and AI developers for about 5 years now. And one of the things that I see is in that community, it's a team sport for them, right? Whether it's Kaggle, DevPost, all of these different forums, that they really want to work together. And so we look at it and say, okay, how do we give back? What is the way that we can help from a community, because the community helps us? And so there's really 3 strategic areas that we look at. And so we try to do a level of funding every year in these areas. One is research and education. Another one is diversity and inclusion. And the other is environmental sustainability. And so some of this we do through internship programs, either through HP, or we've actually funded internship programs with the Cincinnati Reds, and help them get data science and AI interns in for summer for them. Environmental sustainability, we're working with a company in Kenya who has created a model and makes it available to local farmers, so that the farmers can look and see for what time of year it is where they live, based on the topology, the weather forecasts, all of these things. What's the best crop to plant? So we try to look at how do we give back, and how do we help kind of democratize and enable technologies into areas that are more underserved, that don't have it on their own. So I guess I would say in parting that, AI is now. I think you guys realize that. From when I started, like I said, there were some AI classes within the computer science department, but not outside. It's been great over the years as I've been involved with CSU to see it spread out through so many of the colleges and all of the great work that's happening. So, really excited to see you guys here and, joining the journey of AI, because we do think it's a journey and it takes a lot of innovation. So I just say thank you. And I don't know if anybody has any questions?
I have 2 questions, but I'm going to let the audience ask first. Yes? Hang on. I want to listen to your question.
You had emphasized the importance of fine-tuning on foundation models, and you'd also mentioned the emergence of running inference and serving these models on the edge. Do you ever see a customer use case where they'd want to fine-tune that model at the edge?
Absolutely. So a great example, and we worked on this a couple years ago in a proof of concept. Think about manufacturing, right? And you're doing anomaly detection on the line, and you find that your model didn't catch something, right? You need to very immediately retrain and get that back so that your line is not down and that you can do that anomaly detection. So we're seeing, I think retail has a lot of instances in that as well, but it's really interesting. I just started hearing that called self-healing. That's not traditionally what self-healing is, but I get the point that you're trying to self-heal the model as quickly as you can on-prem. I do think you're probably doing the original training probably off-prem would be my guess, because it's usually a much bigger data set, and then these retraining methods on smaller data sets can happen more locally.
Yes.
So you talked about the explosion of not only data in general, but then also how synthetic data is becoming one of the main disruptors in the industry. How does the movement of data connect to that? And how would you say that moving forward, the prioritization of what data is moved to the cloud versus is kind of like left in the dust? And where do all those things connect into each other?
Yeah, great question. There's probably a couple of answers to that. When I look at synthetic data, I think it started coming about because people didn't have enough data and didn't have the right data in the right place, right? And they didn't have quality data. So if we can look at creating synthetic data, then we can bolster our data set and get a better model out. The really big shift in synthetic data that I see being talked about is using it for these other purposes, right? It's not just like if I take the manufacturing example, to create data there, I can take a part and then I can synthetically move it in all these directions and then different lighting and stuff like that. So, but taking it outside of that and saying I can create a synthetic data for a customer profile, it starts getting really interesting to think about how you can use that and what you might be able to do with that. So I think that is super interesting. I also think that the data movement is going to probably have us do more synthetic data at times. I don't know you can always create all the synthetic data. I don't know if you can create insects. You know, you can rotate them and stuff like that and all, but how do you get the breadth of what you need in a specific area like that? That can be very difficult. But I think some of the other areas become really key in order to bolster that data where you need it and be able to do that.
I make synthetic storms. Serious,
Yep.
That's not a joke.
Yeah.
Other questions? Oh.
So as you said earlier, there's been a large increase in interest of generative AI in a lot of different fields. Do you believe that a lot of that may be due to hype and we might be experiencing like a generative AI bubble and it might die down in the next few years, or do you see the growth continuing at the pace that it has been?
Yeah, I think that FY25 this year is going to be a year of disillusionment on Gen AI. And a lot of that is because everybody understood ChatGPT and saw that, right? I'll be honest, it woke every executive up in the country, right? And they started like, I need an AI strategy. How am I going to use this? But it's not the only tool, right? And I think people jumped into it not knowing what they were trying to get out of it. And therefore, that's where you don't have the ROI. You're seeing all these companies made this investment, but they're not getting the return on it that they needed. So I think we're going to see a big backing off on it. And the area where it's actually being successful is where they're taking these smaller models and piecing them together. They're way more directed, and then one feeds into the other. That's where we're seeing people bypass this kind of trough of disillusionment that's coming. But I do think it will pick back up. I think we will understand better how to use it. and as more technology comes about, and as like models get smaller and things like that, it's hard. I love ChatGPT, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to use it, especially in a corporate setting. I can't put any data into it because it goes to the cloud, right? So my use of it is hard, but also I understand that not everything it tells me is true. So I think that that's been a real struggle for a lot of companies as they've tried to use it.
Let me ask my questions because we are walking into the coffee break. You had this top 10 list.
Uh-huh.
Can you go back to that slide? I think you didn't go after 5 or 4. I wanted to look at 6. It was-
All right. I should have said, show
Yep.
of hands, who wants
Earth
me to talk
intelligence.
about?
Can you say something about Earth intelligence?
Yeah. So there's a lot being done, and some of it you heard a little bit about here today, right? So there's so many more scans being done of the Earth, and whether it's from a water source perspective,
Storms.
So, storms, right? So we're seeing that there's Earth intelligence is really coming up for a lot of companies, even corporations. So HP, why do I care about Earth science? Well, I care if it helps me with my continuity planning for earthquakes or weather or things like that, where my factories are and all that. So we're seeing that it's becoming higher and higher up in interest for businesses and governments to be able to track that.
Okay. Thank you. The reason is the other things, it didn't get just classified into a vertical.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but it stood out beyond a simple vertical.
Yeah.
Because I have also been hearing and feeling this, so I just wanted to hear your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will hold back my next question because I think we are stealing into coffee break time here. And thanks again. Amazing
All right.
talk.
Thank you all.
So we come back in 10 minutes, Michael? Yep.